A Little Princess, being the whole story of Sara Crewe, now told for the first time by Frances Hodgson Burnett, with illustrations and colors by Ethel Franklin Betts. Charles Scribner's Sons, New York, 1917. Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Sara Crewe. She was born in India, in a place full of warm air, bright skies, and flowering trees. Her father was a British officer who had become very wealthy through business, but what mattered more to Sara than comfort was the feeling of being loved and understood. Her father talked to her as if she were a grown person, listened to her thoughts, and encouraged her imagination. Sara was not a loud or careless child. She was observant. She noticed small things: the way people spoke, the way animals moved, the way light fell across a room. She believed that every person and every object had a story inside it. Her father often called her his little princess. But Sara did not imagine a princess as someone with a crown and jewels. She imagined a princess as someone who was kind, brave, and generous, no matter what happened. When Sara was still young, her father brought her to London so she could attend a proper school. The city felt colder and darker than India, but Sara walked through it with curiosity. Sometimes she and her father stopped in front of shop windows filled with dolls, books, and tiny painted toys. Sara liked to stand very still and look at them, not because she wanted them, but because she imagined who they belonged to and what stories they were part of. Her father would bend down and speak to her softly, and those moments felt calm, safe, and full of promise. Soon after, Sara was enrolled at Miss Minchin's Select Seminary for Young Ladies, a strict boarding school run by a woman who cared very much about money, appearances, and social position. Because Sara's father was rich, Miss Minchin treated her as very important. Sara was given a fine room, beautiful clothes, and many privileges. The other girls admired her, and some were jealous. But Sara never behaved proudly. She was polite to everyone. She listened, she helped. She became close friends with Ermengarde, a shy girl who was not very clever and often afraid of being scolded. Sara helped her with her lessons and comforted her when she felt foolish. She was also kind to Becky, the poor scullery maid who worked in the school kitchen and was often treated badly. Sara spoke to Becky as an equal and shared what little she could with her. Sara loved to entertain the other girls. She held little tea parties with tiny cups and plates, arranging them carefully on cloths and placing dolls beside them as guests. The girls pretended to be grown ladies and spoke politely, which made them laugh quietly. When the girls became tired of games, they gathered around Sara in a circle. Sara sat a little higher than the others and invented stories. She spoke slowly and clearly, using her hands and face, as if she could see the story in front of her. The other girls listened closely, forgetting their worries, feeling brave and happy. Sometimes they crowded close around her, leaning over her shoulders, whispering questions, eager not to miss a word. Yet Sara always remained calm and gentle in the middle of them. Then, on Sara's birthday, everything changed. Miss Minchin had prepared a grand party with cakes, decorations, and gifts. The girls gathered to celebrate Sara as the little princess. During the party, a letter arrived. Miss Minchin read it, and her face changed. Sara's father had died suddenly in India. Worse than that, his business had failed before his death, and all his money was lost. The party ended at once. In one moment, Sara lost her father, her home, and her place in the world. Miss Minchin's kindness vanished. She no longer smiled at Sara. She no longer cared about her comfort. Because Sara could no longer pay for her education, Miss Minchin decided Sara would stay at the school, not as a student, but as a servant. Sara was taken from her beautiful room and sent to a cold, dark attic at the top of the building. She was given old clothes, little food, and heavy work. She scrubbed floors, carried coal, cleaned rooms, and served the other girls from morning until night. She became tired, hungry, lonely, but she did not become bitter. At night, she sat on her narrow bed holding her doll and told herself stories to stay brave. She imagined warm rooms, glowing fires, and kind people around her. She seldom cried. Sometimes she climbed to the roof to breathe and look at the sky. There she watched the sparrows flutter, hop, and lift into the air without fear. They seemed light and free even in winter. Watching them reminded her that life could still be gentle. One winter day, Miss Minchin sent Sara out on an errand in the cold streets. Sara was weak and very hungry. As she walked, she found a small coin on the ground. With that coin, she went into a bakery and bought bread and warm buns. As she came out, she saw a little beggar girl sitting curled up against a wall, thin, barefoot, and shivering. The child did not ask for anything. She only looked at Sara with tired eyes. Sara gave most of the bread to the beggar girl. The baker watched this from inside. When he saw Sara's kindness, he quietly gave her extra bread and warm rolls, pretending it was a mistake. Sara took the bread back to the attic and shared it with Becky. That night, they ate together in secret, grateful and warm for a little while. The house next door to the school was an ordinary London house, narrow and tall, with 3 floors and windows that looked directly onto the roof of Miss Minchin's building. It was not an empty or dark house, but it was quiet because only one person truly lived there. That person was Mr. Carrisford. He had not always lived such a still life. Once he had been active, busy, and hopeful. He had once had a close friend, Sara's father, and the 2 men had worked together and trusted each other. But their business had failed, and because of missing papers and misunderstandings, Mr. Carrisford had believed that his friend had betrayed him. The shock and anger of that belief had stayed with him for years. Only after Sara's father died did Mr. Carrisford slowly discover the truth. He learned that there had been no betrayal, only confusion and bad luck. He also learned that the fortune was not entirely lost and that the child of his friend might still be alive somewhere. This knowledge made him deeply unhappy, not because of the money, but because of the wrong he now believed he had done. He felt responsible for what had happened to his friend, and even more responsible for what might have happened to the friend's child. So he began to search for Sara. He did not rush into it. He was afraid of being mistaken and afraid of raising false hopes. He asked careful questions and followed quiet clues, trying to discover where Sara might be. His Indian servant, Ram Das, helped him. Ram Das often stood at the upper windows of the house and looked across the narrow space between the buildings toward the school. From there, he could see into the attic windows. One evening, Ram Das noticed a young girl moving slowly inside one of the attic rooms. She was carrying heavy things, but she carried them carefully. She did not move like the other servants. She did not rush or complain or look angry. She moved like someone who was tired but determined to do her work well. Ram Das noticed her again the next day, and again the day after that. Each time he felt that there was something unusual about her manner. So he told Mr. Carrisford about her. He described her quiet behavior, her calm face, and her gentle way of speaking when she passed below in the yard. He also mentioned that she knew things about India that ordinary English children did not know. When Mr. Carrisford heard this, he became very thoughtful. The description reminded him strongly of the little girl he remembered from years before. He began to watch the attic window himself, and the more he watched, the more he felt certain that the child Ram Das had seen was Sara. Still, he did not go to her immediately. He wanted to be sure, and he wanted to approach her carefully. Ram Das, however, became troubled by what he saw. The weather was growing colder, and the attic room looked dark and uncomfortable. The child often sat still for long periods, wrapped in thin blankets. Ram Das felt that the child should not be left in such a place. So one night, when the school was quiet and everyone was asleep, he crossed over the roof and entered the attic room. He found it cold and bare. There was very little furniture and no warmth. He lit a fire. He set out a small table. He placed bread, warm food, and milk on it. He laid clean blankets on the bed. Then he left quietly, without waking anyone. When Sara woke in the morning, she was confused and amazed. The room was warm. The fire was burning. The table was laid. At first she thought she must still be dreaming, but then she touched the table and felt its solid surface and smelled the warm food. Slowly she realized that it was real. She did not know who had done this, but she felt deeply grateful. Miss Minchin soon discovered the change and was very angry, but she could not undo what had been done. Not long after this, Mr. Carrisford felt ready to speak to Sara. He asked her to come to his house and told her who he was. He explained his connection to her father and told her about the mistake he had made in the past. He also told her that the fortune still existed and that she was its rightful owner. Sara listened quietly and calmly. She did not become angry or accuse him. She simply accepted the truth as it was. Mr. Carrisford offered to become her guardian, and Sara accepted. She asked only one thing in return, that Becky should also be helped and freed from her hard life. Mr. Carrisford agreed, and so Sara left the attic and went to live next door. Not as a servant, but as a cared-for child once again. She was comfortable again. She remained friends with Ermengarde. She did not seek revenge on Miss Minchin. Sara had learned that being a princess had nothing to do with wealth. A princess is someone who is kind when the world is cruel, generous when she has little, and brave when she is afraid. And that is why Sara Crewe will always be remembered as a little princess.